Oh, yep. So Stormbender, you've been to it. Now is the pop shop in Sandusky. So yeah, so in a sense, howdy neighbor. I hope you enjoyed your time at the store when you visited, either at the old location downtown or the current location on 250. All right, be well, Obsidian. I'm at home base currently, Woden. But if you need something, let me know, and I will be. Obviously, I go down to the store often enough for checking in on things, seeing if there's any errands that need to be run, swapping out prints and stuff. Now, okay, Nick. Thank you. Just look up Pop Shop Stormbender, and it'll come up for you here. Yep, send me a message, Woden, and I'll let you know what I can do for you. Pardon me. All right, well, I felt a little bad. So last night we were reviewing challenge rating, and I did keep things moving, but I felt like I could have given a more thorough explanation of of challenge rating. Jeez, you know what? And I started this right when I needed to top off here, and I wanted to go through, and before we start discussing adding class levels to monsters to find out what happens to their challenge rating, I wanted to go back and address it one more time. And tonight, we're going to be delving into all three of the core rulebooks. So if you have them, bust them out. Right? This is it's not quite homework, but it's participatory. You can play along at home. Get your core three rulebooks. We keep things simple and accessible. We keep things to the bounded accuracy of the core books here. And so we have our player's handbook. We're not going to delve into that just yet. More specifically, we're going to be in the Dungeon Master's Guide on page 274. Now, if you don't have your DMG or a player's handbook, make sure you stop by your friendly local game store and pick one up. Now, of course, I'll shill for myself. If you need one, let me know. It's my job to get these things out to you all. And not just to put the product on your table, but to teach you how to use it, how to maximize every page of content that you paid for. I did Delport, and I will be sure to bring that up as well. Pardon. All right. The Scullywug was a product of our reskinning workshop last night. That's going to be a fun little thing in and of itself. But for purposes of what we're doing here, I wanted to go back and touch on how to calculate challenge rating. Uh, First, we have a concept. There's a monster that we're not looking to reskin. We want to create a unique monster that is going to fill a particular role that we need for our story, and or challenge our players, or what have you. So, the setup for this is that we want a tanky weakling that will stall the party. The party is comprised of 4 level 8 player characters. So, a medium challenge monster is going to be CR8, as that's the general gist to challenge rating. Now, we could just go across the DMG chart to account for what goes into a CR8 creature. And if it fits these parameters, congrats. You have just a vanilla, straight as an arrow kind of a build. That's the engine, and then put some cool stuff on top of it to decorate it or however else. But we want this to be a thematic monster, a tough weakling that we want to customize and tweak. So, where are we going to start? We're going to look at the defensive challenge rating. We're going to begin with hit points. Generally, a medium challenge monster can last 3 rounds in combat. Many challenge rating calculations are based on 3 rounds worth of averages. In this case, we want a monster with 150 hit points, since that seems to be the party's damage per round. So we know, through playing, our party on average puts out, about 50 DPR. We want our tanky weakling to be able to stand 3 rounds, if possible. So, 150 hit points is a CR6 rating. Because here's CR6 is 146 to 160. Alright. What is the suggested armor class for that hit points challenge rating? Well, for a challenge rating 6, it's an AC of 15. If the monster's actual AC is different, and in our case, say it's because it's wearing plate armor, so it has AC 20, then adjust the hit points challenge rating plus or minus 1 for every 2 points of armor class that it is over or under. And I didn't stress this last night when it came to armor class and that as one of the pillars of this. So in this case, our actual armor class of 20 minus the 15 it should be is 5. So we adjust the challenge rating to 8. That was 6 plus 2. So our defensive challenge rating is 8. Cool. Remember that number. Now, we need to look at our average damage per round over 3 rounds. And this would include passive stuff like auras, or if there's a layer that just emits radioactivity for 10 points every round, then that's DPR. Regardless of the number of attacks or damage type. Remember, for challenge rating, non-magical slashing damage is the same as force damage, is the same as necromantic magic damage, is the same as fire damage, is the same as acid damage or force damage. Note that area of effect spells or abilities presume you hit 2 targets that will fail their saves and take maximum damage. And we're always calculating this based on the highest possible... Well, that was redundant. The highest possible damage per round. Because if we want this to be a quick, in and out in 3 rounds, your monster's going to unload with everything. Tactics might change. That's true. But if everything goes right, not including misses or critical hits, I should say, then you want this as your consideration. So let's say through a mix of attacks, which is 1 massive hit, or maybe a successive 3 small hits like a multi-attack. However it's comboed out, whether it involves opening up with a fireball and then the next 2 rounds are melee hits, we're going to presume our damage per round is 55. our monster's output of damage is 55. Now, that's an offensive challenge rating of 8. You see here? So, that means we should have an attack bonus, which means our stat plus proficiency plus something miscellaneous, like a magical like wielding a magical weapon, or there's something else going on to bump it up. So we should have an attack bonus. Oh, actually, I'm sorry, of plus 7. But our custom monster may be heavily armored, but we know that it's swinging with only a plus 6 because it is weaker than it looks for storyline purposes. So 8 minus 6 is 2. We adjust our offensive challenge rating by -1 to go from a 7 to a 6. If we had a caster style monster, or one that always had a breath weapon, some sort of an AoE that forced saves instead of 2 hit rolls, then we would go off of the save DC column instead of the attack bonus column. It's just whatever, in your opinion, it relies on more for its damage. Forcing saves or rolling to hit. So we'd use the save DC as the secondary measure instead of attack bonus. In our case here, there are no special abilities. The custom monster we're creating is a tank and spank monster. Alright, be well, Bane. Thank you for hanging out with us. So in this case, this takes an adjustment. I was typing it up and I must have mistyped here. Our defensive challenge rating is 8. Our offensive challenge rating is 6. That gives us a challenge rating of 14. We average the 2 challenge ratings, giving us a challenge rating of 7. In this case, we don't need to round up. Although the book says you can round up or down, that might depend if you had to round up or down for either other component. It's your call and consideration. Now, in this case, we needed a challenge rating 8 creature. Because we're making a medium encounter for our party of 4 level 8 adventurers. And it doesn't matter if they're all wizards, if they're all clerics, if they're all barbarians, or a mix of anything. We're just speaking about averages here. What that would mean is we need to find ways to increase the challenge rating. And maybe we do that by adding some abilities or just pumping up hit points. Pardon. Pumping up hit points or damage are some easy ways to do it. If we come down here, and you can find this on some various calculators, there are some abilities that will effectively increase your monster to possibly put it into a different challenge rating category. For example, if we gave our tanky weakling the ambusher property, maybe this is some sort of actually just someone hiding in a suit of armor. maybe not very proficient in it, but it grants high defenses, but can't swing very well. It's still backing up what we need it to do. But we know that the creature is going to be able to get the ambusher property as per Doppelganger. This means that we increase the monster's effective attack bonus by 1. That might be enough to bump up that part of challenge rating, which would then bump up the average. Or we give it aggressive and ambusher. Increase the monster's effective per round damage output by 2. Maybe that was just enough from our average of 55 to bump it up as well. And now we say, okay, we're really creating our own unique monster, and it should still be approaching the consideration we need for the challenge rating we're presenting. It's a good way to customize your monster, and if you want, you can always retrofit the stats to back up these core aspects of the character. So if you want it to drop a magical sword because you know that your party was really wanting one, and this is a way for you to drop loot that they can take, then we know if we're swinging, we want this to be at a +6. Well, we have a weakling, so let's say that this creature's strength is 14, giving us a +2 modifier. That means that we either have a +4 proficiency, or we can fill in gaps like that with magic items that could drop, or other bonuses, conditional things that might go on to tell a story. It's receiving some sort of buff from someplace else, maybe an invisible character that's watching the events to study how the attacks play out for when the conflict finally arrives at his or her doorstep. You can lead into it, and you should, with your story purposes. Tweak things here and there, and you'll have a good presentation. So if we come back over now to our calculator, again, there's various calculators you can use. Let's see if we did this correctly, at least according to the calculator. Our average DPR is 55. Our armor class is 20. And we have 150 hit points. We have no particular vulnerabilities, resistances, immunities, or save proficiencies. We don't have aggressive nor ambusher. And we know that our expected CR was 8. We scroll up. Hey, look at that. We did it. Last time I think I got ahead of myself and I stumbled a bit, so I'm sorry about that. But you can see that everything here calculated through. And this calculator did that work for you. But I wanted to make sure, hi Diadems, I wanted to make sure that we touched on this so that there's a more thorough explanation of the approach. Now, since we took that explanation and that approach, realize that challenge rating does not account for everything. This is a combat-only prediction of averages. Tactics, intelligent usage of skills, abilities, terrain, lucky rolls, or unlucky rolls. All of these are things that can make the difficulty of that battle more challenging than the challenge rating would indicate. And last night we had an excellent example of that in the form of Tucker's Kobolds. And if you're not familiar, the moral of this story, it's a short read, but the moral of this story is if you play your creatures intelligently as the DM, and every fight is not a stand and deliver depletion of pools of hit points, in a Final Destination open arena style, then simple unmodified kobolds can wreck parties with levels 6 through 12 level players, including casters who can cast Fireball. So challenge rating is a good starting point. It's a good place to start looking. From there, do some tweaking, do some thinking about how the combat might play out or go, environmental factors, and how you might want to adjust things on the fly for, I don't know, run-in support of your BBEG who's just getting whooped. Yeah, the challenge rating is like 5 levels higher than the party, but man, if there wasn't a series of lucky rolls or something along those lines. But you need it to be drawn out a bit in order to pad for time, for a great revelation to come about, or just to make sure that your players are getting the fight that they expect. So that's the approach. You calculate defensive challenge rating, offensive challenge rating, you average them together, and that is your starting point for the power level of a monster. Make sure you include any abilities that are applicable for it. And all of this stuff can be found in your core rulebooks. I can't stress enough, if you play D&D, have a set of core rulebooks. Even if you're mostly a player, I would still challenge you. Go to your friendly local game store, pick up the DMG and even the monster manual, and do some world building. Do some calculations. Get inspired. Read what's out there and learn how the system works behind the curtain as well. Not to min-max or power game or to be the that guy, similar to the emote we have here, where you go, actually, goblins only have 10 hit points, and so the fact that I've been counting, and this goblin has taken 34 points of damage. DM, please explain yourself. As we know, every goblin has the exact same loadout of AC and weapons and hit points and blah, 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 blah. Which is not the case. Because sometimes, you know what? You do have to mix things up. And you might want a boss monster or a lieutenant mid-boss character or something along those lines. And I don't want you to be afraid of delving into creating your own monsters. And I suppose the last little bit of catch-up or review from last night was reskin monsters. It is the quick and easy way. It is sanctioned by the rulebooks themselves. This isn't some, clickbaity, DM or whatever, like, Wizards of the Coast hates this one trick DMs use to, make their own content or whatever. It in the books, the first example given, if you want those who hunt elves, you want an arboreal predator that eats elves, take the Quaggoth and swap out a couple aspects of it that do not affect challenge rating. The languages it speaks, its climbing ability or climbing speed has no distinction on challenge rating. It could, the only thing that would be if it has a flying speed and it's below challenge rating 9. If it's 10 and above, generally, players or parties that are taking on those monsters would have ways to address flying creatures, and so it's not as big of a deal. Because as many of you might know, D&D it's fairly tight through level 10. That's why often many of the pre-written modules and campaigns and such end around level 10, levels 1 through 10. It's a good sweet spot, because after that, things start getting kind of ridiculous. And not in a bad way. There's just more to track, more abilities to handle more issues. So you have to be more creative about your surprises and other things like that, because those stand and deliver type fights can often become easier and easier, especially if your party doesn't take, or you're not throwing several encounters per long rest at your party. I understand that that's the concept that goes into it. I honestly don't know many DMs that have ever had 3 or 4 encounters every day. But for a medium difficulty challenge rating, that's the suspicion is you're gonna drain some resources. The next one's gonna drain some resources. The next one's gonna drain some resources. Such that through a bunch of very easy battles, you're decimating their spell, their ability to cast, their items, hit points, and all that other stuff. Or if you want to do several medium encounters every day, that you're quartering their resources, such that 4 medium encounters is a pretty tough day. Something along those lines. Many times, it might be 1 encounter per week, or something else like that, where there's plenty of spell slots available. Everyone's going into it fresh, and they just Nova round the mook, the lieutenant, or the boss monster, because they can pour everything out in those 3 rounds. So that's why things like hit points and whatnot are important to go over and consider for your monsters, especially if you're running a slower paced game that could effectively allow for just these Nova rounds where everyone lines up and boom, they hit it and just obliterate the target. You say, oh, I carefully calculated over the course of an hour in the workshop. This was supposed to be that medium level difficulty. It was supposed to last 3 rounds. Why did it only last 1? Well, just as you need to calculate that maximum output, your players, if they might have a propensity to just light up the first thing that's there. Now, as the DM, you can play into that and go, all right, I baited out all their big spells because they just wanted to get this lieutenant out of the way. Now I'm actually going to throw a fight at them, and they're going to have their resources drained. And, things to consider, things to mix up what's happening. All right, what I'm going to do real quick, everyone, we had this review. Again, I forgot to refresh myself. We're going to go to our break screen super quick okay? I'm going to get up, I'm going to refresh myself, and when we come back, we are going to discuss adding class levels to monsters. Then we're going to actually experiment on monsters by turning them into that which they are plus more. And we'll see how that goes on to affect challenge rating as we've come to understand it. So hold tight, give me 5, no more than 10 minutes, and we will be right back, everyone. I'll see you soon, and I'm really looking forward to continuing the workshop. Hold on tight, because this next part's going to be a lot of fun.